All right. So Alan Taylor told me that you fairly recently moved to Trussville.
Well, my husband and I moved to Trussville about 15 months ago. We
Okay.
actually, yes, about 15 months ago, we moved from Pelham, of course. I had been a resident in Pelham since 2008. And my husband and I will be celebrating 2 years of marriage in July. So we're still in our honeymoon stage, and that's
Yeah.
going well. We actually met Gary in seminary.
Okay.
I teach at Jefferson State Community College, and I've been there for 21 years. I have a master's in public and private management from Birmingham Southern and a master's in music from the University of Oklahoma. So I always say my school got two for the price of one. I teach in that business area and the general area. But
Wow.
my father was a pastor. He passed when I was 10 years old and he was ill for 8 years. So I don't have a lot of memories of him, Gary, but the faith that we had as a family was just really solid for us. And my mom, she's 95. She's fine. Hopefully you get to meet her one day. She is in
Yeah.
excellent health and everything. And she gave birth to 10 children, six boys
Wow.
and four girls. Yes. And if you were to see this tiny little lady, you'd never think she had 10 children. And my brothers obviously tower over her,
I'm
but we're
sure.
very thankful. So, in the fact that my family and I were, very much involved in our faith and in our church, and I have brothers who were pastors as well, I just wanted to go to seminary and do a certificate in Christian leadership. It was something that I just wanted to do personally. And I had not met my husband. We actually went to a function that was being held by the president of the seminary for basically new students. And that's how we met. And he actually is on faculty at UAB. So, yes, we are new to Trustful, but it's home.
Yeah.
And I think for us, being on the council for 8 years and him knowing that about his wife, one of the things that we wanted to do, he had to know that. He
That's
had to
right.
know.
He had to.
So one of the things that was important for me thinking about that going into the future and starting our life together, it is about for us faith, family, and service. That's how I grew up. So when we began to look for homes, we looked in Pelham, of course, we looked in Shelby County area, and we started looking this way and some of the other cities around Trussville. And the home that we fell in love with was in Trussville. And I always say when we began to look for homes, and I tell my husband this, I'm sure he thought it was really strange. I would be looking at the roads, Gary. I was looking at
Yeah.
infrastructure. I was looking at the amenities of the city. It's like, okay, we're not just buying a house, we're buying a whole community. So that was really important for us. So, Trustful is home, it's community, and I feel a part of it. We feel a part of it. And we've been very, very blessed and welcomed. So we attend First Baptist Trustful
Mhm.
and just love our church, love our community. And one of the other things that kind of got me involved, especially when we started in our home, we couldn't get internet. We were trying to figure out how to get internet into Winslow Park. So it's like, okay, is Spectrum out there? No, Spectrum's
No.
not out here. So I would go to the library
Yep.
and print off things, try and get access to internet. And that's how I found out about the Friends of the Trustful Library, the bookstore. So I joined that, and then I've gotten involved, and now I'm on the board of that. So when I think about, we haven't been here for 30 years, but we have really made it home, and it is home. So
Yeah. No, that's awesome. The library is my favorite place in the city. You'll learn that.
awesome.
I've,
That's good.
I'll be there. This episode will come out after that, but I'll be there for. Let's see. I'm scheduled to be in there for 10 hours this weekend
10 hours. Okay.
writing books. It get
So
I,
you are the great author of the wonderful historic book about Trustful.
well, great's a stretch, but I wrote it.
You know what, Gary? Though, when I was a student at Sanford, that's where I did my undergrad studies.
Yeah.
And I was doing music, specifically vocal performance. I was on track looking at performing in opera.
Okay.
And when I was on work study there, I worked in the library. So I have really enjoyed connecting with the library as well. So I think we share that in common. And I have started
Yes.
reading your book. It is a great book. It's one of the books that actually is encouraged to for us to read as part of Leadership Trussville.
Oh
So I
yeah.
am part of that
Okay.
class. So it's been
Are you
great.
are you in the current class?
I am in the current class. Yes, I am.
Then I will see you twice on April 10th. I'll see you at where am I going to see you? I'll see you at the Trustful Utilities for like the end of the day. I'll be bringing some Trustful history trivia to you guys,
Wonderful.
and I'll see
Yes.
y'all. I'll see y'all like 2 hours before that over on the Greenway at Civitan Bridge and give a little historical overview of that bridge.
Well, it's been a great read. And, it's kind of ironic that when we think about how things kind of work together and you start meeting people, and the book was introduced to us last week, and I was reading about the Truss family and the
Yeah.
impact that they had. And I think for me, Gary, reading that book, given the fact that in Pelham, I was on the city council for 8 years.
Yeah.
And as I said, when my husband and I married, that would have been that ninth year, because this past reelection cycle, we were in office, would have been in office for 5 years.
Right.
So for me, when we began to look at that and reading that book on the history of Trussville, it really resonated with me because I did leadership Shelby County, leadership
Mhm.
Shelby when I was there. So I know the impact of a leadership trustful, and the information in the book. It just makes it full circle when you're thinking about getting to know your community, getting to know the
Yeah.
people and the history of what makes trustful. And it's really wonderful the way you laid that out, because understanding the name, that name
Yeah.
is connected to that
Yeah.
family. And then you began to look at, or I began to look at the way the city is laid out. Many times when development is starting to happen and growth is starting to happen, especially in that early time of the birth of Trustful, you begin to try and get business in as quickly as you can, right? And you
Yeah.
try and get homes and all those things established. So looking at even our Main Street in that downtown area, even though the Trust family probably weren't thinking 40, 50 years down the road and what
Wow.
it would look like, they
Yeah.
really laid a good foundation to me, because part of what we had to do in Pelham, and I'm just very thankful for all of the experience that I've been blessed to gain over these years. We had to really develop a city center because we
Yeah.
didn't have a downtown area like Trustful. And
No.
so just seeing what's been going on from that historical point of view that you lay out in the book, and then looking at it in our modern day based on things that I've done through the city of Pelham and planning and zoning when I was there. Before I actually got elected, I was appointed to the Planning and Zoning Commission. And that's a 6-year appointment by a mayor.
Yeah.
And the planning and zoning is actually established by law. You cannot
Right.
dismantle a planning and zoning.
Right.
So being able to serve on that was really wonderful. Now I'll tell you how that happened. When I
Yeah.
was a student at Sanford, I had no intention whatsoever about going into local government. Now I will confess, this may, I'm kind of a history buff myself. I liked William Buckley. I'm not sure
Okay.
if you're familiar with firing line and all of that. This kind of
Yeah.
back in the day, as they would say. So I like to
Yeah.
go and YouTube certain, really influential people who were looking at what was happening in the political realm.
Right.
And so based on that, when I was a student at Birmingham Southern, I was doing my master's in public and private management. And I wanted to do an internship. And I wasn't required, Gary. I think it's that eternal student, that
Yeah.
lifelong learner in me. So I wanted
Right.
to have an internship. And I ran into this gentleman that I knew from my church. I attended Sixth Avenue when I was in college at Sanford. And so he encouraged me to go to the 2121 building. And I found out that there was an internship in the building and inspections department in the city of Bessemer. So here I am doing this, internship that I wanted to do. It wasn't required. And I ended up in the building and inspections department under the director. So I would go out on site inspections. I had to help
Mhm.
set the inspector's agenda up for the day and all of
Oh
those
wow.
things. So I was learning a lot,
Yeah.
but still had no intent at all about going into government. So I remember I was walking down the hall one day and I saw this sign that said um, training for planning and zoning officials. So I decided again, that eternal student, wanting to learn, wanting to grow, I decided to do certification. So I got certified as an Alabama planning and zoning official. Now we jumped time. I moved to Pelham, didn't even know anything about Pelham. Okay, I grew up in, I'm not sure if you're familiar with this area. It's called Titusville. It's in the West End area, over where
Yeah.
Elmwood Cemetery is and
Yeah.
Princeton Hospital. And when I
Yeah.
talk to a lot of the friends that I've made here and in Trussville, they're familiar with that area. So that's where I grew up. My father was the pastor at South Hillerton Baptist Church. And when I also love to claim this too, I love to claim her. Condoleezza Rice grew up in that community.
There
So
you
I
go.
am very proud to claim her. So she grew up there. Her father was a pastor there before they went on, before he left, and I think went to Colorado. So I just love the and respect her as a person.
Yeah.
I, I say all that to say when I did that certification and was in the building and inspections department in Bessemer, moving to Pelham, it was about 3 years later. Didn't know anything about a Pelham or at all. I was just trying to find this home. The director of the business department, a very nice gentleman, his name was Hal Harris, and he's since passed away, but he was my chair and he has started getting involved with real estate. And so I went to him and I said, well, Hal, I'm looking to purchase a home. So I was a single young woman purchasing a home. And he said, well, just get on Valleydale and keep going straight. He said, you'll run into Helena. So I
Yep.
didn't know anything about a Helena. Okay, we grew up in, as I said, the Titusville community. My
Yeah.
mom, we then moved to Roebuck. So I did
Yeah.
begin to know the Trussville area. And he told me about it. The home I found was ultimately in Pelham. So that's how I came upon Pelham. So when I got there, the one of this gentleman that I met actually told me about a position, an appointed position in the city. So I met him because I attended an HOA board meeting. Now, Gary, I didn't know anything about HOAs. Growing up, we did not have an HOA
You
in
know.
our
Yeah.
community. So I am a proponent. So when I bought my townhome, this sweet little lady, her name was Miss Ruth. Miss Ruth has since passed away. Miss Ruth came to my home, knocked on my door with her little walker, and she brought me a plate of cookies. I didn't know that plate of cookies. Gary had some intent behind it. So she told me, she invited me to her home. And she said, well, Mildred, I want you to get involved in the HOA. I was like, well, Miss Ruth, I don't know anything about an HOA, but tell me about it and I want to serve. So from 2009 till we moved in 2024, I served as the HOA president. So I am
Oh wow.
yeah. So it kind of tied in though, Gary. A lot of things can work together when you're
Mhm.
pursuing things that's in your heart. And I tell my students that at Jefferson State. Pursue what's in your heart, pursue your interest because you never know where it's going to take you. So, from moving to Pelham, meeting Miss Ruth, and taking that plate of cookies, be careful when people come bearing a gift.
Yeah.
Brought that plate of cookies. I took it, and that began to introduce me to people in Pelham. And once I did that, I met this very nice gentleman who became like a mentor to me. He introduced me to the mayor there and let the mayor know that I came with some knowledge. I came with background from the building and inspections in Bessemer. So that's how I got appointed to planning and zoning. And I chaired that for 4 years. So even still during that time, when I did my internship in Bessemer, I had to go to city council meetings. I
Yeah.
had to go to planning and zoning meetings and board of adjustment meetings. So I really was gathering all of this information and learning all of this, but still was not thinking, okay, I'm I'm going to run for office. That
Right.
that's in my future. No, actually, I was looking at an opera career. I was
Yeah.
looking at performing. And so when I got to the University of Oklahoma, I was awarded a fellowship, and I'm very thankful for that because, as I said, my dad passed when I was 10, and my mom, she was a relatively young woman when he passed. And so she still had the rest of us to raise. And
Yeah.
the older five siblings were just really wonderful, especially two brothers in particular who really just came alongside and walked with my mom and with us, as a
Yeah.
family. And in doing that, as I said, was awarded that fellowship, and that started me teaching. So I've always taught at the university college level, from University of Oklahoma, Indiana. When I came back here, I taught at Birmingham Southern in their
Yeah.
conservatory. I taught at Miles College. So I have a lot. So when I think about, again, here in our community, when I see our schools and all that happens with our students and the administration, the teachers, the staff, it's solid. It is really, really solid in terms of
Yeah.
preparation. So the I guess the why of pursuing something that I never thought I would is because when I think about Trussville, our home, our community, and knowing that it's part of my family now, we're connected. When you have someone in your family, Gary, I think we would both agree, and they need something, whatever it might be, and you have the capacity to help to meet that need. You may bring the skills, it may be something financial, it may just be support. Come and walk alongside me because
Yeah.
you can help. I would say that's a big part of what has um, driven my love for service and my desire to come along my city and help and serve because, as I said, I've been very, very blessed to be able to have the knowledge and the education. And I wasn't mapping all of that out. It was just my steps were ordered that way. And so that's why, I want
Yeah.
to be able to share. That's why when I came and we moved here, I got involved with the Friends of the Trustful Library, got involved with that, wanted to volunteer. Um, was encouraged to get into leadership trustful. So sometimes people can see in you maybe things you don't see in yourself, which is
Yeah.
what I saw all along. Having people to just speak into your life, like that dean did for me at the University of Oklahoma. The gentleman from my church who said, go to the 2121 building and see what they have in terms of a possible internship. And I did those things. And to me, that's what service is about. You're
Yeah.
not just thinking about yourself. You're thinking about others and how can you give back? And what do they say? Pay it forward.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Was it hard to move from Pelham to Trussville? Was it hard to just uproot?
Actually, I would probably say no in some respects because I knew that in terms of my service, right? One might say, well, you're very integrated into the community. You're an elected official. People know you. You have relationships. We attended First Baptist Pelham. You have a church family. You have a full community. I think it was not really terribly difficult. Obviously, I love Pelham, and I don't have to not love Pelham. It's like I
Yeah.
love growing up in Titusville. I don't have to stop loving Titusville because I'm not there, right? But when you know that you've served, and when you know that that season is coming to a close, and you've given your best, then I think it makes it easier to say, okay, as a person of faith, God, what do you have next for me? And I
Right.
also kind of go back to the fact that, my husband and I were praying about the starting of our life together and what would that look like for us as a couple.
Yeah.
So I think for me, it was good. It was good. And I hope
Awesome.
that the work I did there continues to move forward and it was made better.
Yeah. How do you like I've said this with everybody, y'all have got time until August. I mean, you've got a good 5 months to do what you need to do leading up to that. What does that look like for you? Like, you know, you get some people who, they're running and they've lived here for however long, over a decade, whatever, 20 years, whatever. I'm curious, like, because your involvement, like you've talked about, is already, like, you're well involved already. I mean, you've been here a little over a year, but you jumped right in. So, like, what does that campaign type deal look like for you? Because there will be people along the way who aren't yet familiar with your name. So, like, how do you kind of approach the next 5 months?
I think that's a great question. And because I didn't just think, let's just dive in to this process, it's a commitment. It
Sure.
is, to me, it's a calling. I see it that way when um, one of the papers that I wrote during seminary was looking at government and how that plays into our faith. So for me, it really is a calling. I always go back to the different individuals in the Bible and how they were used. What will that look like? People getting to know Mildred Reed, and being able to go to different events, continuing to build those kind of relationships through church, through the library, through the bookstore, venues like this, just being visible. Because what do people really want from their elected officials? I think to know that they care, to know that they're
Yeah.
being heard, to know that their opinions matter. When I did begin to get settled in, I wanted to meet the mayor and I wanted to meet the city council members. I still was not thinking about running for office. That wasn't a primary thing on my radar. Actually, most people for almost a year, at least 8 months or so, didn't know anything about my political background. I wanted people to only get to know Mildred.
Right.
That Mildred is a real person with
Yes.
other interests and a family. And every
Yep.
time I meet you, I'm not trying to, work you over as a politician. It wasn't
Right.
that. It's, hey, just get to know me. And um, for me, it was really being careful about how God would use me, if he was going to use me at all. So I would say continuing to do things in the community, being as visible as possible. Yes, it's going to be important that I say, hello, I'm Mildred Reed and I'm running for city council, place 4. That is important because that's how they will know what you're doing. Social media outlets, of course, are part of that, but it's really trying to get people to know me, to introduce myself to them, and for me to get to know them because it matters. People want to feel that their elected officials care about them and they're accessible. And that's
Yes.
why it was important to me, not from a political standpoint. I'm a resident of Trussville. I have to vote too in 2025, right? So I
Yeah.
have to know who's who. And I wanted to be able to say, I've met my mayor and I've said hello, I've introduced myself, and the same thing with the city council members because they are my representatives. So I think over the next several months, it will be those things that are traditional with, running for office.
Yeah.
You can't get around that. Will
No.
I be able to get to every registered voter? Okay, that's like probably not. And that's just honest. You
Yeah.
try and get out and as visible as possible, but I can't say that I'll be able to get to every voter,
Yeah.
but I'm going to do
Yeah.
my best to, become available and visible so that they know that my heart is only about service, only about
Yeah.
service.
Yeah. What have you learned about Trustful so far? Like just living here for the time that you have, that I don't know, either you didn't know, or things that you've come to really like about it.
Well, what I've realized about Trustful, and I often will share this with people when I'm talking to my family and other friends, Trustful has a unique spirit. And I've lived in some other states and lived other places. There is a true sense of community in Trustful. People in Trustful, whether they were born here, raised here, went to school here, went off to school, and they come back and they bring their families. There is a love of the history of Trustful. There is a sense of um, if you need me as your neighbor, I'm there for you. So Trustful truly has a spirit of community. And I think that is something that truly sets it apart. It is very inviting and welcoming. Have noticed that, and I'm very thankful for that because you want to move into a place. It's kind of like when you meet a person, Gary, and in meeting someone, sometimes there's just a connection. It's like I can connect with that person. It just seems really
Yes.
natural. Or you
Yes.
go somewhere and you're like, okay, I feel good about this place. And I think for me, that has been the beauty of Trustful for me. Other things that I've learned doing leadership Trustful is a wonderful, wonderful experience. As I said, I had the experience with leadership Shelby. You learn so much, and I've learned so much about my city and my community that I would not have known in just the normal way of getting acclimated to a city.
Yeah.
I've learned about the Trust family. I've learned about the ACTA. I've learned about the community choir. I've learned the history of the Cahaba Project. I've learned about our wonderful industrial park. Now, we had one, of course, in Pelham, but it's just
Mhm.
wonderful to learn all of these different things about what makes Trustful thrive. And to see, again, when I'm looking at things, I look at it not only from the residential side of it as a homeowner, but my political experience comes into play as well. So it's like all of these things that are in place that were foundationally laid, even though people may not have laid it all out perfectly. Sometimes we can say something is like mishmash or hodgepodge or whatever,
Yeah.
but they were laying some foundation to build upon. So I've learned that there is a sincere love for this community. And
Yeah.
I have learned that people, the residents, we are very invested in seeing Trustful successful in every way. And as a community, are willing to put forth what it takes to make that happen. That's time, that's finances, that's volunteerism. So if other communities had that, it would really amp them up to another level. So I think Trustful as our community is far and above in its love for its history and what it has to offer. So yeah,
Yeah.
I've learned a lot.
Yeah. Yeah. I've asked kind of everybody this too, and I'm especially curious from you. Let's take the library out of it. If you've got a free hour in your day and you're just around town and you don't have an errand to run, it's just a free hour. You can do what you want. What are you doing in Trustful?
Okay, on that free hour, okay, I'm loving the different restaurants that we have. The TED is fabulous, but I also really enjoy going to our Veterans Memorial Park area and that green space. I love that. Um, I have three, two brothers and a nephew who served in the military. The oldest of us, my brother Michael, passed when I was a student at Sanford. He had served in the Marine Corps. And then my brother Ronnie served in the Army. And his son, Ronnie Jr., also served in the Army through the reserves and then has later on gone into law enforcement via that. So I like to go there. For several years, I served as a trustee at the American Village. So, as a trustee, we're
Okay.
looking at, yes, in Montevallo, we were
Yeah.
looking at what it means to truly be a patriot and to love our country. So, when I go there and I see the flags flying and I see the wonderful monuments, it just really ministers to me in a very special way because I recognize having been a trustee for the American Village and knowing what my brothers did with regard to service. That's where I like to go. I like to get my sandwich from Heroes or some of the other places and go out there and eat.
Yeah. That's a good spot. It's a really good spot. It's a better use now than what it was 100 years ago when it was a county convict camp on that space.
Okay, so now we have free walkers. Yeah, so that becomes very important. But that's what I like to do. I really do enjoy going there and just taking it all in and just enjoying that time.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. So like if you are if you're fortunate enough to be elected, like, you know, this is kind of how I've worded it with people as well. Trussville is a place that, you know, that latest tax vote that failed, that it failing presents challenges obviously for the school system. And the city is in a tough financial spot. I mean, a lot of them are, but they're maybe in one of their toughest financial spots. Like, so there are challenges. Like, what do you kind of see as challenges here, and how do you work to, you know, as a group, as a council, to kind of remedy those?
I think that's a great question. When we think about the future of the city, and this goes back to my business background as well and teaching that, it is important to have a strategic plan. Now, we have the 2040 plan, so we don't want to dismiss that. When we think about what the future looks like and some of those issues, yes, that tax did fail. And I went back and did some review of different things. Trussville did make the initial break to start its own school system. That kind of goes back to what I was saying. Trussville residents, us as a community, we're willing to invest. Yet there are a lot of other things from a municipal perspective that have to be taken into consideration. So when I think about what does that look like, number one, I would say strong financial position for the city. That is crucial. That's like if you and I have no money in our homes, we're going to struggle,
Yeah.
right? So yeah, you have to have it. So it becomes important for us to begin to look at what our financial position is right now. We want to obviously have a very strong rating for our bond rate. So we have good credit. That becomes important. It opens us up for access to funds when we need it. But when we think about the future, as I said, that strong financial position is crucial. And that means evaluating priorities for the city based on projects that are currently on the table, and then how we look at that, and whatever we may be thinking going into the future as council members, what we think is necessary at the time going forward. So having a strategic plan about that from a budgetary perspective is so important. I'm accustomed to looking at budgets. We dealt with budgets over $80 million or so. So, you know, you have to deal with the money and everything can't go to one place. So when we're
Right.
thinking about that financial perspective, that becomes important. Strategic planning for the different projects. Also, under having a strong financial position, reserves are so important. Now, you and I know when we're doing our own budgets, if we use everything, if we spend everything, even though we love our city, if we spend everything and we have no reserves and something happens, we're in trouble. So it's important for us as we're thinking about budgeting and projects that are current projects, anticipated projects, it's going to be very important that we're always putting something aside for reserves. And that's just, again, strengthening our position as a city. So
Yes.
to me, number one, got to look at the money. That's going to be very important. Number two for me would be infrastructure. Now, one may say, well, what is infrastructure? Quite often we think infrastructure as only roads. Roads are part of infrastructure, but roads are not all of infrastructure. So when we think about that, certain roads, and we have Highway 11, some things are county roads, some things are state, and some things are federal. So when we think about what that means, infrastructure would be those roads that we are truly responsible for, maintaining those roads within the communities, in those residential areas, main streets that are truly ours that we have to maintain. Infrastructure also is looking at sidewalks. You know, we have the desire is to have a walkable city, right? And we do have that. So when we think about infrastructure, it's going to be important that we maintain those sidewalks. We have individuals who have special needs, and we want to make sure that those sidewalks allow them to enjoy our city and the different venues as well. So that becomes a major part of the bigger picture of infrastructure. Another thing that becomes important with regard to this infrastructure is looking at our city facilities. So whether it's the library or the parks or the rec center or anything of that nature, that's infrastructure. right? And so it becomes important to, again, think about maintaining that infrastructure, those facilities. As we are growing as a community and as a city, you have more people, more usage of those facilities, more potential wear and tear on those infrastructure buildings and so forth, even our maintenance buildings. Infrastructure becomes important. When I think about our first responders and making sure that what they need, we don't technically say, well, is a fire engine infrastructure. It's used as part of helping to secure infrastructure within our city. So those things become important. So when we think about how we're going to plan for 5 years, 10 years, 15 years. We teach this short term, intermediate, and long term goals. We can't leave off these very things. Do we have the money? Do we have good reserves? Have we been maintaining our infrastructure so that we don't have to do a hard turn to get them back up, and functional? So I think that becomes very important for us as well. And I think as a person who served on the Planning and Zoning Commission and chaired it for 4, as I said, I was also the liaison to planning and zoning when I was on the city council. Those type of things become very important when we're thinking infrastructure. So infrastructure also is residential development and what that looks like, roads that have to be put in, how the city may require certain things with regard to building those different types of subdivisions. Again, it impacts infrastructure, whether that's roads, facilities, and so forth. So to me, that becomes another factor. And that becomes an area that is important for us. And I would say another area to look at is strong alliances with multiple stakeholders. Strong alliances with the stakeholders. That's the residents. That goes back to, as a representative, listening to them, hearing their concerns, being willing to talk to them, and recognizing, and I think this is so important, and I've always felt this way, and when people have asked me about running for office, what does that look like? Don't mislead people. You have one vote. You have to use that vote having gotten the most important information that you could, getting the experts to guide you, and voting, working together as a council, mayor, and department heads. We can't leave them out. Others who lead this city, your fire chief, police chief, all of these leaders are part of that strategic alliance as well. And I say to create those strong alliances, that means letting people know, the residents know, department heads know, council know. There are things we may want, but we can't get everything that we want. Kind of like for Christmas. We may want to give our loved ones or children all of the things that they want on that wish list. And then we say, okay, now you need to scale that down a little bit, scale it down some more, and Santa's going to bring you what he can, So right. It becomes important to help share the information and let people know this goes back to the strategic plan. It goes back to what is the vision into the future and what can we really do effectively in these strategic alliances. Can we even share certain resources with one another within the city? And I guess also when we think about strategic alliances, that's with the small businesses that are here, especially those that are part of our wonderful Main Street and those individuals who are taking the risk to start a business, to hire people. That's introduction to business. That's what I've taught for years. So they are actually doing it. So as a council member, it becomes important to support them. It becomes important also to support our larger businesses and corporations that are here. In doing leadership Trussville, we went and visited the industrial park. It's like, okay, I know industrial park, yes. So going to the industrial park, learning about the wonderful companies that are here in Trussville that have international presence is major. And when I think about Amorex on 11, before I really understood what they did, I would often say to my husband, that is such a pretty building, the way they had the fountain. It was just so pretty, But that says to me, Amorex wasn't just trying to come to a place and plan itself, but it wanted to add value, not just financially from a revenue perspective, but even the visual aspect of it. They didn't have to do it that way. They didn't have to design it that way. So they too have vested interest and the other corporations that are here. So it's important for us in those strategic alliances. And
Yeah.
with fresh eyes, sometimes, you can go back and look at your house or something of that nature, and you say, okay, I haven't looked at you like this in a while. There's some potential here, right? And
Yeah.
so it made me think of the shopping area. When we go to Chick-fil-A, okay, go to Chick-fil-A,
Mhm.
Gary.
Yeah.
Go to Chick-fil-A too. So when I'm at Chick-fil-A and I keep on riding up the road, you know, one of the things that has kind of saddened me a little bit, and I think again goes back to strategic alliance, strong financial position, and infrastructure. You know, um, when we think about the restaurant that is gone now, think of Palace, Big
Yeah.
Lots.
Yeah.
Those companies are being hit from a different level, right? But it's affecting us. So I think from a strong alliance perspective, strong financial perspective, I would hope that as council representatives, if I'm given the honor and the privilege to serve our city, that we begin to make sure we don't forget about certain other pockets of our city because we
Yeah.
are one community. And I don't know if you saw The Lion King. I always like to use this in my the first one in my
Yeah.
examples with my business students. We're all in the circle together. We're all in
That's
that
right.
circle of life. Okay. So what affects you affects me. And what affects me affects you as well. And I think from a governmental perspective, a municipal leadership perspective, we want to make sure that everybody is being shored up because it does potentially impact the city as a whole. So I think that too becomes great strategic alliance and just periodically engaging with those general managers of some of our larger stores and communicating with them because again that's part of infrastructure as
Yeah.
well. And I would say strategic alliance also with the schools, but that's so apparent.
Yeah.
That is so apparent. That spoke loudly to me before I even started with Leadership Trussville. And when we did Education Day last week,
Hmm. Yeah.
all of the different academies,
Yep.
all of the investment in from K through 12 in every way that our schools have put not only talk the talk, they're walking it out and they're putting the money toward it. I know we have the issue with growth, with pain, definitely understand that and that tremendous number of students there. But the school system itself is fully invested. Those three tiers, those three pillars, academics, arts, and athletics
Mhm.
are fundamental. And it doesn't only stop at the schools, it's spreading into the community, in terms of the different um, outlets that are available. So with the academies, dual enrollment. I teach dual enrollment students in my business classes, in my music classes. And so that part of that strong alliance and maintaining that is a big part of what I know that our schools and our city is doing tremendously, tremendously.
Yeah. I wanted to connect a dot real quick that
Yes.
maybe you already know. Um, Going back to talking about the industrial park and Amarex specifically and kind of their investment in, like the fountain and not just, hey, we're not just opening a business here. We want to be this community, visual kind of thing. Well, do you know where Payne Elementary got its name from?
I should, based on the book that I'm reading. Tell
So,
me, give me
so
more history knowledge.
So Ned and Goldie Payne opened Amarex in the 1970s, and when there was a need for another elementary school space, Amarex owned that land, and they donated that land to the school system, so they named the schools after them.
Oh, wow. Now that's incredible. I
Full
did not
circle.
know that. Yes, it is full circle. And that goes back to what I was saying before, the true investment of
Yep.
people in Trustful, is it didn't stop.
Right.
And Warren Trust and his commitment in that family unit, I think, again, laid a serious foundation. It's a serious foundation that today um, we are all benefiting from, blessed by, and hopefully will be able to, continue that steadfastness investment like they did. Yeah, I
Yeah,
did
for
not know
sure.
that. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm full of random trivia. You'll get to hear more of that April 10th. I,
Absolutely. But you know what? It really puts things in perspective because sometimes
it
we can
does.
look at a person and we don't know their history. People don't know growing up. As I said, my father passed when I was 10. There was no college fund for us. He was a pastor. So
Yeah,
sometimes people don't know your history. They just see you in your present. And there were steps that went into people investing in your life and believing in you and coming alongside. So when you shared that, to me, that's what history is about.
yep,
History is about letting us know whether it's our own personal history and our own personal story, or what you share so well with the history of Trussville. It lets people know, hey, this didn't just happen overnight. There were sacrifices along the way. People made investments in and gave of themselves first. They gave of
yeah,
themselves. And I think you have to have a true servant's heart and really pursue what you're doing because you feel called to do it,
yeah,
because you feel called to
absolutely,
serve. Yeah.
absolutely. So just to kind of wrap this thing up, what will your campaign look like? Are you going to do the whole thing? You social media stuff, yard signs all over Trussville. What's it look like for you?
I definitely will be doing that. I will do that. Again, I've been doing this before, so I know it's
Yeah,
important. It can
sure.
seem like, oh, here we go, just doing something, but it's a way for people to get you to know you. So
Yeah,
yes, I will, and just being able to have this opportunity with you, though, Gary, is very helpful as well. So I will be doing that, and I believe it's important. I always say you only get one chance to make a first impression, so you want to make a good impression as
yeah.
you are pursuing it. But yes, I will. And I'm excited about it because ultimately the goal is service. The goal is
Yeah.
service.
Yeah. Well, that sounds good. Well, I appreciate you taking the time. It's good to get to know you a little bit, and we'll see how this thing goes in 5 months. Like it's so far away.
You know what? It seems far away, but it's moving fast. It's like the train on the tracks.
Well,
It's
well, hey,
moving fast.
hey, I know you know those trains don't move very fast around here. I know you've already heard that.
I have heard that and I have seen that. But it's kind of like once the train starts on the track, it's no stopping until it pulls into the station. So I
That's right.
definitely know that, that's part of it. But I hope that in people getting to know me and me getting to know them, that I'm able to really say, and hopefully say it in a way that uh, they know my heart. I've been blessed to gain this knowledge. I've been blessed to be able to be, educated from the standpoint of municipal government. And I've been prepared all along the way, never even anticipating how it would unfold in my life. And I do believe, like I said, with the family, because we are family, we're in the circle together in Trustful. When the family needs you, you step up and help the family.
Right.
You are there for the family. And that's how I feel about um, seeking to serve and given the honor by the residents to serve on their behalf. They're my family, they're my family community. And whatever I have gained in knowledge through masters in public and private management, through certifications, through the practical experience of planning and zoning, board of adjustment, and being elected, twice by the voters of Pelham and being trusted to do that. My heart is to bring all of that to my new community, to my home, and to my city.
There you go. Well said. I appreciate you taking the time.
Well, I appreciate you too, Gary, and I look forward to seeing you in a
Yeah.
next month. and learning more. And really thank you for what you do, because the fact that you created this platform and you've given all of the candidates, and will give all of the candidates, the opportunity to share their vision and their desire to serve and their preparation, I think, which is so important um, to serve, is really great. And I recall, as we get ready to wrap up, one of the gentlemen said that potentially this year, 30 years of experience, 30 years of knowledge will be potentially gone. And when I think about the fact that 12 years of knowledge and experience I can offer to my city, to my community, and that's what I want to do. So thank you for that, Gary.
Yeah. Yeah. No, sounds good. I'm happy to do it. Enjoy doing these, and we'll continue to do so. I hope like 8 more people don't jump in at the last minute and cause me to lose a lot of sleep. So hopefully that's not the case.
That's true. But you know what? We are trustful. So we step up to the plate.
That's it. That's it. Well, I
Yes.
appreciate you, Mildred. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Have a good one.
You too. Bye.
Bye.